Welcome to part 3. I'm now going to talk about the port security feature and how to defend our networks using this feature. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to register a MAC address with the switch so that we can essentially profile our network so that we only allow a certain address or maybe 2 computer systems onto the network. Anything after that, we can set some rules in place to basically shut down the network. So what we're going to do is we're going to investigate this on switch 1 now. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see what does switch 1 currently know. And what I can do for that is I can say show MAC address table. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell me all of the various different MAC addresses this switch 1 currently knows about. And what I've done here just in the time between video 2 and part 2 and part 3 now, I've added 2 PCs, PCE and PCF, and we're going to see that how they work in a moment. But what we'll notice here, guys, is at this, for example, at this moment in time, fast Ethernet 0/4, we can see that there's no dynamic ports learned on this address at the moment. In order for the switch to learn about a PC, it has to send in traffic. And when the frames come into the switch, what will happen is the switch will learn basically the source MAC address and will populate it into the MAC address table. So let's see how that can happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to PCC. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to do an ipconfig /all. Okay, /all. I'm going to make this nice and big so we can see the output. And I'm going to have a look at the fast Ethernet connection, the wired connection, and I can see that this physical address, or the MAC address of this computer, ends in 6570. That's the full address there of this computer PCC. So 6570 it ends in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send some traffic. I'm going to ping now my friend over across the network, PCD. Okay, and PCD was 192.168.10.20. So what I'm going to do is 192.168.10.20. And what I'm going to see is I'm going to see some replies, so that's good. I'm communicating across the trunk link over to my other friend. I'm going to go back to now my switch 1, and I'm going to hit enter a couple of times, and I'm going to hit the up arrow to see the MAC address table again. Once I do that, we'll see, guys, that we've now actually learned some new information. We'll see that we've got a new record there. So notice before the the FA 0/4. So what's happened is the switch has learned this new information. So when I pass the traffic through, it said, oh, you look new. I'm going to add you to my MAC address table. And here's the thing, with attacks, sometimes what could be happening is we might have an attacker here that's got a program. Maybe it's an attacker that have maybe Kali Linux, basically an operating system that has all sorts of attacking tools. And what they could be doing is they could be pushing in lots of source MAC addresses, sending lots of traffic, pretending to be lots of computers. And what could happen is this MAC address table could get full up. And essentially, what will happen is if this MAC address table gets full up, what happens then is the switch starts to behave like a hub in the fact that it starts to send traffic at all ports. And because it starts sending traffic at all ports, the attacker, maybe connecting to one of these ports, will be able to view the traffic. So what we want to do is we want to limit how many MAC addresses can actually attach to this individual port. So in order to do that, what we're going to run through now is we're going to go under that exact interface, and we're going to go into interface fast Ethernet 0/4. And what we're going to do is the first thing we should do, and we should always make sure, now we've done this from a previous video, but we're going to make sure that this is a switch port mode access. Now again, if I wanted to see what's currently the configuration exactly at this moment in time under fast Ethernet 0/4, I could do show, run. And what that will do is underneath, if I just scroll down here we can see, guys, that's the interface, that's the information that we've typed so far underneath this. So again, I've typed in that on a previous video, I typed in port fast. So what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to continue on with this configuration. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically set up some more details here in this. So what do I mean by more details? Well, what I'm going to say is under this port, I'm going to say switch port security, and what I'm going to say is I want to allow a maximum of 2 MAC addresses. And once basically I find and I register 2 MAC addresses, if a third MAC address basically registers or tries to send traffic through this port, what I will do is, by default, I'll do a violation shutdown. So for port security, and we're going to turn this on in a moment, the default setting for this is that basically it has a maximum of 1 usually. Okay, so if I didn't type this in and if I just went switch port security, it would basically say I'm turning it on and I'm only going to allow 1 MAC address only on this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to experiment and show you this a couple of different times. So I'm going to say maximum MAC address of 2. Okay, so, oh, my apologies. I need to say, yeah, that's it. Switch port security, maximum 2. So now what I'm saying, underneath this port, okay, and if I check now the show port security, okay, let's just have a look. At the moment, I haven't turned it on, so this is going to be blank. It's saying, I don't know about port security at the moment. You've told me about maximum 2 MAC addresses, but at the moment, you haven't actually done this. So what I need to do is, I actually need to type in the last thing to actually enable this, is to actually go switch port security. Once I do that, guys, what's going to happen is, if I go Command C, if I go show port security now, what it's going to show me is, it's going to show me the rules that I've set up. So in here, what it's saying is, underneath Fast Ethernet 0/4, I've got a maximum secure addresses that I'll allow of 2. So I'll allow 2 MAC addresses to communicate. Once they start communicating, what I'll do is I'll count those MAC addresses. And what I'd like to do here, guys, is rather than manually hard coding every MAC address, and this is where PCE and PCF is going to come in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use basically a command called sticky. And what this allows us to do is, when it learns a MAC address, it adds that MAC address automatically to the running config for us. So that when it takes note of the 2 addresses, it basically says, okay, these are the 2 addresses that I will allow traffic go through. But once the third one comes in, it will deny the traffic. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back under that port. I'm going to go interface Fast Ethernet 0/4, and I'm going to go switch port security. And then what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to check MAC address. Okay, so, and then what I'm going to need to do is, once I do that, I'm going to add the line sticky here. So what this is going to do is, rather than hard coding, I could hard code and say, oh, okay, I'm going to hard code PCC, the MAC address of PCC. I'm going to hard code the MAC address of PCE. But then anything after that, like PCF, that's going to basically go down. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to slightly, rather than hard coding the address, I'm going to allow the switch to actually figure this out for itself dynamically. So once I click here, I'm then going to go and I'm going to say, right, let's now fire some traffic off again. So if I go show port security, let's do that again to see, have we learned any MAC addresses? Still haven't counted any MAC addresses as of yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my PCC and I'm going to fire some traffic across through that port. Now what I'm hoping is, I'm hoping that this will update, because now port security should be monitoring this port and should say, hey, I've seen a MAC address count of 1. Let's just hit the up arrow and see. So now we can see, guys, look at that. Port security said, hey, I see a port now, and I'm going to recognize, I'm going to allow this port to go through. And we notice here, this is still in an up state. Also, there's another really useful command here, guys, that is, if I basically type in the command here is show port security interface Fast Ethernet 0/4. Oh, let's make sure I get that correct. Now what I can see is, let's have a look at this, guys. I can see port security is enabled. I can see the port status at the moment, it's securing. So in other words, it's only allowing specific traffic through, and that's only the MAC addresses that we're going to currently allow. It's in an up state. The violation mode says shut down, and it says it here as well. So again, once this policy is broken, it basically says shut down the port. Don't allow any traffic through. Okay, you'll see here I'm allowing maximum MAC addresses of 2. Total MAC addresses of 1 at the moment, and you'll see the last source address that it learned of was basically this guy here. Who is this guy? You might remember the MAC address ending in 6570 was our friend PCC. And what VLAN was it on? It was on VLAN 10 that we set up previously. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is, and if we do one other command now, if we go show run and look at the configuration of our running command, look what's happened, guys. It's added the MAC address of PCC to the running config to say, hey, I'm going to allow, anytime I see this traffic coming in from this guy, I'm going to allow it. He's now in this policy. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is just imagine this is Bob in the office and Bob has two devices. So what Bob does is he says, oh, I'm going to now, this is his regular computer and he's got another computer. Maybe this is a laptop of some sort. And what he does is he says, I'm going to take the cable from there and what I'm going to do, Bob says, I want to plug in my other laptop. So he's going to connect it up here and he's going to connect it to that port in the wall, which leads to, for example, Fast Ethernet 04. Once I do this, guys, once this guy starts sending traffic, and you can see this is port fast, it's immediately basically come up. What I can do now, guys, is you can see the status line. I'm going to just hit my up arrow and I'm just going to see, did I learn more details? So you can see here now, look, I've counted another MAC address that's connected straight away up. If I use that other command that I showed you a moment ago, you can see now the sticky address count has gone up to 2. I'm now at my maximum. You can see this is a new last source address learned. It ends in 2B6D. How can I prove who this is? I could go into PCE, I could go into command prompt, and I could say in command prompt, I could just do an IP config all, and I could check what's his MAC address. So if I move this over so I can see a little bit more space, look at this. I can see he's ending in 2B6D. If I go back here to my switch, I can see the last person that sent in, and that was learned about this MAC address was 2B6D. So you might say, well, what would happen now if, for example, Bob went home for the evening? And let's say a malicious actor came into the organization and was inside the walls of our organization and said, now it's nighttime, I want to start manipulating the network. I'd like to cause damage to the network. What they could do is they could simply, maybe Bob has shut down his computer, like a good practice what he should do when he leaves the office. What the evil attacker might do on PCF, they might say, take the cable, the network cable from this port 4, and they might attach it to their PC in order to run some tools. Maybe they've got Kali Linux. But what should happen, guys, is as soon as they go to connect up their port, it should be shut down. So let's see if that works. Okay, so in this point, guys, nothing's happened. It's like it's come up something. So at the moment, guys, it's still available. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in here. I've configured the IP address. And what I'm going to do is, let's say this attacker now starts to want to send traffic into the network. So I'm going to say ping 192.168. Let's say 10.20 across the network. Maybe this evil attacker wants to launch an attack. Once they send traffic, look what happens, guys. Did you see that? How cool is this? Straight away, the switch said, oh, you've broken the policy of our network. We've set up this policy to only allow a maximum of 2 addresses. So when I go into the switch, guys, what we can see is, we can see that the port has been changed to down. If I go into show interface fast Ethernet 0/4, I can see, guys, that this port has gone into an error disabled mode and the port is now down. The attacker won't be able to launch these attacking tools on this port. So again, this is one layer of defense in our security policy, and this port security gives us this. So that stops our evil attacker in his tracks and they can't launch that attack. So now you might be saying, well, Greg, let's imagine it's the morning time now. The administrator comes in and sees, oh, this is interesting. The port went down and it's in an error disabled state. Sees the log message. Maybe they go down and they say, let's have a look at the port security. It says now a violation has occurred. Look, the violation has come in. And what we can also do is we can use our command earlier on. Do you remember this command? And we can see who set off this port violation. We can see now it's no longer up. The port is in a shut down state. Basically, it's shut down. And I can also see, guys, this is the offending PC. This is the attacker's PC in this case. How can I prove that? Again, if I go over to PCF in this case, if I go to ipconfig /all, and if I have a look at the MAC address ending in 2146, okay, I can see 2146. this indeed is our evil attacker. So I can pinpoint who the last person was to break that policy. Now you might be saying, but Greg, how could I now enable this again? Well, there's a couple of things that we need to do. If I try to go under interface fast Ethernet 0/4, a way to do this sometimes is, if it broke a policy, we could just literally shut down the port, it's already shut down, and go no shutdown. Okay, this would usually bring back up the port, but in our case, because we're only allowing a maximum of 2 guys, this isn't going to work. So we can see it tries to do it, but the port stays down. So how do we fix this? How do I know that this isn't going to come up? Well, if I go do show run, let's have a look, do show run, and I'm going to go down and have a look underneath this port. Have a look at this, guys. At the moment, it's learned about 2 entries that has been put into the table. So at the moment, these 2 guys are basically allowed. They're the only 2 allowed, basically MAC addresses, to be allowed to be forwarding traffic. Now, when I say that, to be allowed to be forwarding traffic, again, because fast Ethernet 0/4 is shut down, okay, it's not going to be, this guy isn't going to be allowed to basically send traffic through. Let's say, for example, I said, actually, this person isn't an evil attacker. Maybe this is Bob, and he's brought in his tablet or another computer into the office, and he says, hey, I want to use this computer because these 2 computers are broken. What I could do as an administrator, I could say, well, actually, okay, no problem at all, Bob. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one out. So I'm going to say, you're no longer using PCC now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out of the running config. I'm going to say no and paste this in here. And then what's going to happen is, if I do a show run again, what we're going to see is, now I've only got 1 learned address. So the 1 learned address here, guys, is just this guy here. Okay. And what will happen is, as soon as I bring this port up, this guy will obviously learn this MAC address and say, oh, everything's okay, I'll bring the link up because you're not breaking the policy. I'm allowed to have 2 MAC addresses at any one time. So what I'm going to do now is, now that we've only learned 1, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down again, and I'm going to go no shut, and you'll see now, guys, that this port has come up. And if we do a show run, let's see if he's learned that, do show run, let's see if it's gone into the MAC, and straight away, guys, I didn't even need to send traffic because this port security up, already this PC is maybe done an ARP, and this guy has learned his MAC address, but again, it's now brought the interface up, and this guy can now send traffic. Of course, if I now switch out this port and connected this guy up or another PC up, and started to try and send traffic, what's going to happen? It's going to disable again. It's going to do a shutdown of the port again.